still hard times. There's an auction taking place here this morning that should illustrate the point perfectly. A luxury house in Fermanagh is expected to go for a third of its price in the boom years. A piece of land in County Tyrone looks like going for £100,000, a tenth of the £1 million it would have made around 2007. Now, Jonathan Davis, the economist and wealth manager who's been talking property down for quite a long time, he's going to tell us that he was right. Hello, Jonathan.
Hi, Stephen.
Good morning. Martin McDowell, the Managing Director of Osborne King, the company that's holding today's auction. Morning to you, Martin.
Morning, Stephen.
Nice to talk to you, Martin. Well, first of all, give us a sense. Is this auction just starting? Is it over? What's happening?
No, it starts at 11 o'clock this morning. You catch me just in final preparation here in the auction room.
And what's the score then? What's the feeling on the ground? Is demand there if the prices are cheap enough?
Demand is there if the price is right, but the big problem remains that there's very little finance available. And certainly your opening statement where you say the sort of devaluation of sites in particular, especially residential building sites, is very much that they're running at about 10, maybe 15% of where they were at the height of the market, depending on where the site is.
Which is incredible. Yes,
but you have to remember that the market became so overinflated that there is a big element of that is the overinflation bubble being burst. And in reality, where site values are is probably at about 50% of where they would have been in about 2005. It was the growth in the last 3 or 4 years of the boom that really put everything out of proportion.
And that's for sites. What about actual property? What people will be looking at the likes of today's auction and they'll be trying to get a feel for their own property out of it.
Yep. Realistically, most people, and it was a dinner table conversation for many, many people, as the market was escalating, most people were regarding their property as a short-term asset, and therefore its price was very important in how much it had gone up in the last 6 months. The reality is property has always been a medium to long-term asset, and growth in Northern Ireland for many, many years ran at about 3 to 4% per annum. Suddenly it was running at 25%, 30% per annum, and that was completely and utterly unsustainable. The real position is that if you've bought a house to live in and you bought it probably prior to 2002, 2003, your pricing is probably not dissimilar to what you paid for it. If you bought in the boom years, the real boom years between 2003 and 2007, you're probably looking at about a 50%, 40 to 50% downgrade on what you paid.
If you bought it from when? 2006, did you say?
2003 up to about 2007. Those were the real boom years where it was escalating. But in particular, if you bought in 2006 to early 2007.
So do you think we're back now to what, 2003 prices?
I think realistically, most people are back to about 2002, 2003 prices. However, the speed at which you can sell has slowed down dramatically due to the limited availability of finance. And plus the fact the current recession is just making people more cautious anyway.
So you're saying we're going back the guts of a decade now?
Yep.
In prices?
Sadly we are, but I mean, that is the reality. And I think the biggest thing that people forgot for a long period of time is houses are for living in. They are not, a lot of people became speculators. A lot of very ordinary, decent people became speculators in property, in house prices, which really, at the end of the day, your house is for living in.
So that means that for the majority of people then who bought over the last 7 or 8 years, they're sitting in negative equity?
No, most of the people, anybody that's bought, 2009, 2010 into 2011 is probably fine because they will have seen the market drop back. It's really the people who bought between 2003 and 2007 who are probably looking at, quite high levels of negative equity. Do
you think the boom years will ever come back?
No, not in my lifetime. I think this is a generational mistake. It's a 30, 35-year mistake. The last mistake of anything like this proportion was in the late 70s. It is a generational mistake.
So if you did buy 2003, 2007, and you're sitting on a mortgage that you will never be able to afford to clear, you're in trouble.
I think for a lot of people, they're going to spend a long time clearing it. I think it is going to be difficult. I think if you borrowed to the absolute max, in those years, and got very high levels of finance out of the banks. When I was buying my first house, the maximum you could get was 3 times your salary as a mortgage. Suddenly, with things like self-certification of mortgages and things like that, people were borrowing 7 or 8 times their salary. And that is just an unsustainable model.
Jonathan Davis, this is what you were warning about.
Indeed. As you well know, Stephen, there were extremely few of us from the mid-2000 onwards who were saying that there is a massive accident waiting to happen. In fact, the bulk of commentators, the radio, the TV, the press, apart from notably the Belfast newsletter, the developers, the chartered surveyors, the estate agents, the bankers, the economists generally, were all saying nothing to worry about. In fact, isn't it funny that the people, you said, you opened it up by saying, I've been talking down the market. No, I've been forecasting what was going to happen to the market. I'm not talking up or down anything, but I find it fascinating, and I'm sure your listeners will as well, that the people who stated the facts about the Northern Ireland economy as opposed to the hopes have actually been proved right.
Give us a sense then, if you can, Martin, of some of the properties that are going to be up for auction today.
Well, there are a range of properties today, and a lot of them are single sites with planning consent in rural locations that, probably at the time when they were purchased, and they were bought a lot by speculators who bought a site, got planning and expected it to escalate in value, and they would then just flip it on. In reality, we have sites today for single houses with planning consent ready to go for as maximum reserve, and that means at that price it will definitely sell in the room for as little as £10,000. So that's the sort of guideline. There's various other individual one-off houses that are probably sitting, as I said, about 45 to 50% of their peak of the market value.
It's astonishing. It really, really is. And Martin, thank you for joining me this morning. Jonathan Davis, thank you.